Welcome to the Hundredth Monkey Radio with Tom and LFE. We are recording this on November 27th of 2015. And, we just had Thanksgiving yesterday.
Yeah.
It was great to see all the family and friends that showed up over at my mom's house this year. My son just got back from Europe. He did he did 3 months of backpacking over there and had a great time. Was in 13 different countries, and he came back with plenty of stories. I guess backpacking across Europe's pretty easy to do. With the hostels everywhere, he did it for dirt cheap. I was surprised at how cheap it was for him to spend 3 months over there, and yeah,
great experience for him. He just graduated from college. He was kind of looking for a job. He had plenty of job offers, and I'm just so glad that he didn't go straight from college right into the workforce. That he took a little break and seen the world and had some experiences. So I'm really happy for him.
Well, now he's excited. He wants to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to go right to work. I think I'd rather go explore.
Yeah, maybe he'll backpack through South America.
Yeah. He'll have a blast. Anyways, so, we are the Hundredth Monkey Radio, and that whole collective consciousness thing, and how information is put into and drawn out of the collective consciousness. We had quite a conversation here this morning, just getting ready for the show. It is a huge mystery on how that information is put into and retrieved from. What are the prerequisites for? We talked about a good example of the collective at least primarily the collective consciousness is Wilbur and Orville Wright and the airplane. While they were putting their airplane together in their garage in Kitty Hawk, there was a guy over in France that was building a plane at the same time, and they flew within like weeks of each other. Mm-hmm. And zero cross-pollination. These guys are doing this stuff in their garage. It's not like they're on the news. And back in the early 1900s, it's not like they had the internet or even telephone across the ocean to be able to communicate. So that's just a one of many, many, many examples of people having the same types of ideas at the same time that are it's time is here to be accessed from the collective. So I take that kind of stuff and add that into my little basket of what I've experienced, what I've learned about the 100th Monkey Effect and collective consciousness, and it's just another feather in that cap of sorting out what the hell's really going on here, and is that 100th Monkey Effect, is there a switch that can be thrown that makes everybody go, oh, wow, I got it now? Or is there prerequisites that people have to be able to throw the switch for themselves?
Yeah.
I think the truth lies somewhere in the middle there. But we're going to be delving into that tonight. We've got an amazing guest for you this evening, and synchronicity brought Rae Randall to us. I was listening to Lana over there at Radio 314, and she did a show with Claire and on the 100th Monkey Effect, and right after I finished listening to the show, within an hour, Claire drops me an email, and I was like, ding, 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 synchronicity strikes again.
Yep.
So Rae Randall holds an honors degree in philosophy and psychology from Leeds University with a graduate diploma in art therapy. She has worked in psychiatry, mental health, and personal development, taught psychology and further education. She's the author of Waking the Monkey, Becoming the 100th Monkey, which is the book that we're going to kind of center the talk around here today. Claire, welcome to the 100th Monkey Radio.
Yay! Hi, hello, Tom. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm very excited and I'm rather nervous.
So, Claire, before we get going into the 100th Monkey Effect, which is a huge topic, and there's so many different little parts to this that have a huge impact on it. We'd like to get a little bit of background on you. Your credentials are outstanding, so I love getting people that have got some kind of a background on the show, because it lends so much more weight to their discussion when they show that they've done the work, even within the system. So what was it that actually got you into looking at consciousness in the first place?
Oh, well, I guess it's just a lifelong interest in what you might call esoteric psychology. And I don't know where this came from. I certainly didn't have any esoteric influences in my childhood that I can think of or that I'm aware of. But I just had a penchant for the weird, I guess. I think if you want my very earliest memory about this, I think it was probably a comic of Doctor Strange, drawn by Steve Ditko in about 1965 or something, and that just seemed to have some kind of irresistible attraction for me. It seemed to kind of symbolize everything that I wanted to know about. And so as life has gone on, I've pursued that in many different directions, and try to leave no stone unturned, I guess.
Right. Did you have a religious upbringing?
Well, I went to a Church of England boarding school, and I think it'd be fair to say that has had a strong influence on my life, but I've always felt like I wanted to go beyond the limits that it placed, I guess.
Right. So your book is primarily centered around an event that happened in your life, or a series of events that happened in your life, beginning in 95, right?
That's correct, yes. I mean, the book itself is about 8 or 9 days of my life from 1995. As you'll have found out by flipping through it, you'll see it's almost a kind of minute by minute account of what was probably the most catalytic experience in my life in terms of moving me on from a probably rather stuck mindset that I was in. This took place at the 100th Monkey Camp. It was an event billed as an experiment in consciousness and world healing, and I'll get into explaining more about that, I'm sure. Though it actually took 3 years. We did this event 3 times in 95, 96, and 97. This book focuses entirely on the first camp because it was such an experience in itself. Plus, also, it took me absolutely years and years to write. There's a tremendous amount of backstory to this, which doesn't get into the book. Partly because I didn't know about it at the time. Partly because I thought, well, it needs to fit into a context. So there are things that it kind of evolve and come out in the second and third camps. And so I've kind of notionally committed myself to trying to write books of my experiences of the following 2 camps as well. That's quite a major undertaking, and I'm a bit daunted by it, but
right.
To give the full story, I think I need to do that. But this first camp, the book on the first camp, sets the scene. it can be read entirely on its own, as a work entire, and what actually came out in the following years very much built upon this as the foundation in terms of my sense of increasing agency and empowerment. So that's really the message that I, the lesson that I learned from it, and the message that I'm trying to put into the books, I think.
Right. Right.
Mm.
So to get this out there in a kind of a defined form, the 100th Monkey Effect. Well, and I'm going to read a short thing out of Wikipedia, which isn't really the greatest, resource for understanding what the monkey effect is about.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's pretty polarized, but the 100th Monkey Effect is a supposed phenomena in which a learned behavior spreads instantaneously from one group of monkeys to all related monkeys once a critical number is reached. By generalization, it means instantaneous paranormal spreading of an idea or ability to the remainder of the population once a certain portion of the population has heard of the new idea or learned the new ability. The story behind the supposed phenomena originated with Lawrence Blair and Lyle Watson in the mid to late 70s, who claimed that it was an observation of Japanese scientists. One of the primary factors in the promulgation of this story is that many authors quote secondary, tertiary, or post-tertiary sources who have themselves represented the original observations. Now, the research that I've done on the 100th Monkey Effect, their biggest the one thing that they claim as the reason why it actually spread, or I get this comes out of one of the skeptic places of how it actually spread from island to island, is that a monkey swam from one island to the other island and shot the other monkeys.
Well, actually, that's the first time I've come across that statement. Although, I mean, I know there is a lot of criticism about this, but Ken Keyes does claim in his original research, which was a decade or more before Lyle Watson, he does claim that this was observed, and he makes no mention of a monkey. Whether another monkey might have swum across, of course, it could well have done. It's kind of, I mean...
Yeah.
Well, if a monkey can swim across from island to island, why would it not just teleport, right?
Well, from what I know of these islands, there seems to be, quite choppy seas and distances. I mean, I really wouldn't like to say. I guess it's possible, of course. But I think that this might get out to some, but I think even if, in the case of Ken Keyes' observations, there was something like that took place, I think that there are other cases of this kind of thing happening, perhaps not in quite the same way as Ken Keyes and Lyle Watson suggest, but for instance, ideas popping up, like you suggested, the Wright brothers and the French chap. There's another example. Sir Isaac Newton and Gottfried Leibniz in Germany both came up with the idea of the calculus for calculating areas under curves. Independently at almost exactly the same time. So there are, you could say this is a result of converging evolution, but if you think about the fact that, say for instance, and I think it might be extinct now, but there was a marsupial wolf. Now it's completely unrelated to the mammalian wolf that we know, but it was its phenotype was almost identical, apart from the fact that it had a marsupial reproduction system rather than a mammalian one. And this has obviously taken place. It's convergent evolution, and I think that this might seem something a bit more material than a truly psychic transmission. But if you think about it, it's the universe coming to the same conclusion in different places where the circumstances allow. So, I mean, I'm into the idea of what you might call emerging archetypes. So, these things might be, well, this is interesting because actually I haven't thought about this, but Leibniz actually had a model of the universe in which it was a slight development on Descartes' dualist theory. And Leibniz suggested that the spirit world and material world were just synchronously in parallel, and that God had ordained it so that the spirit could experience matter, but because spirit was not able to influence matter, it had to experience it in this way that God had ordained, so that it was a psychophysical parallelism, I think was the term for it. So I think in similar ways, we shouldn't be constrained to, very rigid either or alternatives. But I think we might have a situation where the collective mind of the universe is evolving and putting out pseudopods, as you might call them, into situations, and the life force is finding the same solution. So the life force is coming from a more collective and deeper level. So it might work through a kind of rooting in the nature of reality, rather than in just like a more simple telepathic way that's kind of suggested by Lyle Watson. So I hope that wasn't too elaborate.
No. So this is the old proverbial chicken or the egg question. Is it something that do you think within that, is it something that we're actually able to project into the collective as an idea or a thought, or is it? Do you think it's more, or how do I put this? Do we have the ability to put that something new out there, or are we actually receiving something that's already there? Did I make any sense with that?
Oh.
I mean, because is it already or do you think that all ideas, thoughts, everything is already in that collective consciousness, and it's just a matter of us being in a place or having the tools that we need to be able to access it?
Right, yeah, no, I'm with you now. Yes, well, I think that that it does exist at one level. You might call the level of Platonic ideas, but I think there are kind of layers of this. There would be the collective mind of Platonic ideas. But that would include kind of everything. And I think that as you get, I'm quite into the idea of alchemy and evolution. And so I think that these are then kind of selected and evolved, and they create what you might call archetypal streams. And bring things more into reality. So that's why we've had millions of years of dinosaurs, and then that stream of reality kind of died out and was superseded. So we can only experience these ideas in a kind of linear time fashion. So we can't experience them all at once. that would be kind of self-defeating.
Right.
So I think that it's a process of evolution, bringing these ideas up, evolving them, putting energy into them, and seeing it where it takes us.
Yeah. You know, the first time I heard about the 100th Monkey Effect was about 6 years ago.
Ah.
You know, and so after I heard about it, I started thinking, you know, has there been a reflection of that through humanity, right? And so I started, you know, and I kind of pondered on this for a while. And then I started thinking about the way that we say yes and the way that we say no. You know, we shake our head up and down for yes and side to side for no. And it seems like wherever you go in the world, humans shake their head up and down for yes and side to side for no. Do you think that could be an example of the 100th Monkey Effect on a lower scale of just by our yes and no and our physical manner?
Well, I mean, Rupert Sheldrake suggests that organisms have a morphic field, which is what is like a kind of underlying etheric template, so that when you cut yourself, the DNA knows what to do in terms of arranging the proteins and stuff. But he suggests that there's actually a kind of fine energy or morphic field that the proteins and the cells would kind of fit into. So I think that we, as organisms, I think we do very much have morphic fields, and there are obviously levels of energy in our existence, material, bioetheric, thought, and so forth. So I think that in an evolutionary sense, these things become the morphic fields that our DNA and our life energy is able to fill in. I mean, just actually, interestingly, the particular example that you give, although, well, it's not quite the same, but there's a physical anthropologist and comparative psychologist by the name of Dr. Paul Ekman, who's done work over the last 40 years on facial expressions and gestures, which he's demonstrated are actually universal to humans, and in fact, even some of these primates will recognize them as well. Their smile, disgust, anger, and I can't remember. There's always one that you can't remember. And his work actually was used a few years ago for the Lie to Me television show that I found quite entertaining. And I don't know if you remember that show.
No.
No?
I'm gonna have to look that up.
It was a very interesting one. It was there was a.
Was that broadcasted on CNN?
It was.
Right,
well,
right.
Yes. Well, it was on cable. Yeah. What it was there was like an expert. There was a guy who was an expert in body language. Now, body language, there's some parts of body language which are cultural, like particular gestures that some people from one culture might find, offensive, and another culture might not even recognize. But there are other more basic parts of body language and physical expression, which are deeply rooted as primate behavior, kind of gesture to do with, basically, territorial display, defense mechanisms. It's basically signaling, signaling basically approval or not. This is what it comes down to in really, really deep level behaviors. There's very, very few basic things in evolution, and then when they become into the human level, they become vastly diversified, even though they really have their roots in very simple things: pleasure, aversion, fear, simple animal instincts. But we as humans elaborate them immensely. So we share these things at a deep biological levels. So I don't know.
Right.
Was that helpful?
Yeah. So that's a good example of actually the effects through the morphic field, or the collective, if you want to call it that, they're shared traits that we do have. I mean, like LFE brought up, the nodding your head yes and no. It seems to be a universal movement, body language thing that is acknowledged throughout the planet. And there's no reason why shaking my head side to side could not be yes. Well, you would think if these cultures develop independently of each other, that one would have a different signal for something like that than another. But they've developed as universal signs. So, like the smile, right? Everybody knows a smile is a happy face, that you're in a state of pleasure.
The evolutionary ancestral biological roots are much stronger influences than the mere culturally adopted, ones.
Right.
So, but I think that I wouldn't want to merely, be reductionist about this in terms of it being, simply a biological evolutionary. I think these things exist at the what esoteric science, to go back to that, esoteric science teaches that there is, there's the material level, then there's the bioetheric, and the mental and spiritual planes. And these each have different frequencies within our material body. So when you're kind of experiencing contact with your higher inspiration or getting some kind of whole soul healing from your kind of inner levels, it kind of comes down from the more the finer levels of spirit, and then gradually filter down into almost like a 3D printer filling the form.
Right.
I love metaphors of modern technology.
Right. Oh God, yes. It's helped out so much in understanding consciousness on so many different levels and so many different ideas. So
so you could say that the form that the 3D printer is filling the thing with, that's the morphic field. So you have to build morphic fields. They have to. One of the things that I think is really important is that it's got to do with putting energy in. I don't think that we can expect a kind of free lunch. I've had lots of different feelings about this over the years, but I don't think we can entirely expect to be lifted sheer
evolutionary process.
Yes, but sorry, I think that you do have to put some energy into it, and you have to be ready for it.
Right.
So it doesn't just happen. Like there's a million people get a particular idea, and you have to at least be open to it, or willing to understand it, or something like that. But even I think in Lyle Watson and Ken Kesey's work, they said there were kind of older monkeys who were, didn't want to, pick up the new behavior, and, there's no amount of pressure. In fact, you can kind of create resistance that way,
Right.
So,
well, none of the monkeys would have washed their potatoes if they wouldn't have had potatoes in the first place. So there was a prerequisite there.
well, yeah,
They had to have the tools or something already set in place for it to become active within them in the first place.
That's right. Yeah, and it's simply the intelligence and inquisitiveness to be willing to do that. And I think one of the problems that we have in the world today is that a lot of people are very, 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 very attached to their morphic fields.
Right.
And there's not, well, it's kind of it's kind of an obstacle. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, we're so set in that 3D mentality. If I can't see it, touch it, taste it, feel it, then it's not reality. And that's the mindset of, the lion's share of the population on the planet is within that mindset. But so the adding energy to it, feeding energy to ideas, thoughts. Do you think is one of the prerequisites for the for helping it to grow, for something that for its ability to be grown? Do you think it has to be fundamentally a truth to be able to promote?
Well, I think it's a journey of exploration, because we don't, we none of us really know what is coming along the way, or and I think one of the things that I certainly experienced when I was as I recounted in my book, I ended up having very different ideas about these things at the end of this challenging experience than at the beginning. So I think we can kind of like the morphic field. I think we can bring too many preconceptions with us sometimes.
Right.
And it's kind of ironic, really, but the primary thing that I got from the camp was going through kind of gauntlets, rites of passage, basically facing my own evoked demons, you might say, triggered by things in the camp, the meditations we're doing, really building up the kind of intense kind of energy within oneself, and then incredible kind of sensitivity to things, kind of almost to the point of ridiculousness. But then putting me into a place where I had to find some resolution within myself. So this was the big kind of the big intense kind of showdown with my own shadow, really, that I experienced, and so I mean, perhaps I'm kind of jumping ahead to the end here, but I'm thinking that that an important part of this is dealing with your own shadow, as
yes,
as kind of exemplified by the shadow, as Carl Jung kind of described it, those dark parts of ourselves that we don't kind of realize we have, but then if we kind of explore enough, you can shine a bit of light in there and find out things that can help you become more complete
Right. You know, you mentioned something that you mentioned rite of passage for yourself. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that's something that is sorely missing in our society today.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and if there was one thing that I could bring back onto the planet right now, that I think it would be one of the more beneficial things for our future would be some form of a rite of passage or the initiation process that everybody should go through, exploring
Mm-hmm.
consciousness and reality. I mean, it throughout history. And there's still places on the planet today that some of the tribal societies which still have their
Mm-hmm.
rites of passage into manhood or
Mm-hmm.
womanhood, and the majority of them have to do with exploring alternate realities. And
Mm.
you know, geez, how many different tribes? Well, South America is a big one for ayahuasca,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Certainly, yeah, yeah,
There's
yeah.
gain over in Africa. You know, there's all these
Mm-hmm.
different rites that people go through going into
Mm-hmm.
manhood or womanhood that open themselves up to the larger reality, to something that's beyond the third dimension.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sorely missed today in Western
Mm-hmm.
society. Uh,
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And I think it's not just the one, kind of the rite of passage into adulthood at 14 or whatever it might be, but the whole attitude of our civilization is one which shrinks from challenge.
mm,
It has to be, it's got to be safe. Everything has to
Status
be,
quo.
so everything's got to be, just, and yes, exactly. The status quo is safe, but also the physical world is so safe that I can't really kind of relate to the world today for children, because when I was a child 50 years ago or so, uh, my father worked in West Africa, and I would wander around, you know, where there was about 3 European people within 10 miles, and the place was crawling with scorpions and vultures and all sorts of things. But um, and my mother probably had an eye on me and I didn't realise. Um, but to that's our evolutionary history, and we've been kept protected from that for just a few generations, if then perhaps, in England we don't have, scorpions and vultures, but, we still have brambles and bogs and, hornets, and I think people need to be able to explore the natural environment, because that is where true wisdom comes from.
Mm.
In nature teaches us things. The way that things work in nature are the way that things work.
Yeah.
And we have lost touch with too much of that, and we've also lost touch with our own our own sense of feral identity.
Yeah.
I remember quite a few years ago when I was first hearing about these strange. I'm not an expert on this, so I can't really go into it. But just talking about the greys, the grey aliens, and I only had one kind of brief imaginary experience with them, and it's just a kind of brief episode in the book, and basically, whether they're my imagination or not, I mean, it's fairly irrelevant. But the way they seemed to me is that they seem to be just so ultra. They're like people who live in machines or something, That what they symbolise to me anyway. And I said to a friend who was quite into them, thought they were great. I couldn't understand it. I said that they think that we're like wild and dangerous. And he said, yeah, I know. So I said, well, that's great, because we're human beings, we're wild animals on the planet Earth, and we have to get along with each other and respect all the boundaries and everything. But if we lose that sense of ourselves as living beings on the planet where there's all wild things, that's where we came from. That's where our billion-year ancestral evolution comes from. And I think it's so it must be so difficult for children who are kept inside all the time, and they don't have you only see everything through a screen rather than the sensory experience of texture, which is such an important informer of our senses and enriching our minds.
Yeah, and back to the rites of passage. It seems like in our society nowadays, since we don't have this rites of passage ceremony for our youth into adulthood, it's like where's that cutoff point between childhood and adulthood? If we don't have this rites of passage ceremony, it's almost like for me, I'm 32 right now. And, I remember being, 10, 11, 12 years old and looking at my dad, and my mom when they were my age and thinking, oh, that's an adult, they're grown up. Well, now I'm their age, but still, it's still, I'm still waiting to feel like that adulthood, So, I mean, I am an adult, I work, pay my own bills, all the stuff adults do, take care of my kids, take care of my lady, all the stuff adults do, I still do that, but there's still not that feeling, that I thought that there would be that feeling when I got to a certain age, like, okay, this is what adulthood feels like. So with these rites of passage ceremonies, it's there's that point to where, okay, I'm a child, now I'm an adult, and also, going through these ceremonies, it almost feels like it brings that childlike wonder back. When you're at that age and you're expanding your consciousness, or you go into one of these, these ceremonies to expand your consciousness, instead of being doled out by the world or by our modern society, that, everything's very rigid and this is the way it is and there's no other way to look at it. It almost brings back that childlike wonder about what reality really is. So you grow up through this ceremony, and at the same time you open up through this ceremony to what else is out there. So, I really think that's something that's missing nowadays. And like you said, go out into nature, cause that's where the true knowledge is. If you look at a tree knows it's a tree. A tree knows that it's nothing else besides a tree. There's that saying in the Bible, with the faith of a mustard seed, you can move mountains. Well, it's because that mustard seed, no matter how big or small it is, that mustard seed knows that it's a mustard seed and knows that it's nothing else besides a mustard seed. You see what I'm saying? So it's in that moment, in nature, if we can know who we are and what we are exactly, and not and be unmovable in that, a tree knows it's a tree. It doesn't think it's a rock. It doesn't think it's a flower or it's water. It knows it's a tree. So,
yeah. Well, finding our inner nature.
Yeah.
Well, we've been taught we're just drones.
Well,
that's what Western society brings us up as. We're just drones. We're good workers. We follow the laws and follow all the rules, and we just do our 9 to 5 and pay the bankers.
Well, yeah. And, I mean, how to get out of that is the question, isn't it?
Exactly.
Go on.
Well, and that kind of brings me back to, the 100th monkey question, is there a critical mass that we can reach to where it becomes common knowledge to everybody, you know. So like if we reinstitute these rites of passage ceremonies for this generation that's coming up now, and if, you know, enough, you know, youth do these rites of passage ceremonies and expand their mind and expand their awareness, is there a critical mass to where there's the runoff effect into the rest of society?
Yeah, well, I think this is, I mean, I've been thinking about this, obviously, for quite a long time. I mean, there's a radio station here in the north of England called Critical Mass Radio, you know, and they you know, talk about the same things from different angles. And obviously, the last few years, particularly, you've kind of seen the whole game kind of ramping up intensely. And you keep thinking, how is this going to work out? Fortunately, the conclusion that I gained in my book is one that I'm still willing to stand by, which is that I think that we have to, that in the face of challenges, we have to first think about our own survival adaptation. Well, it's kind of a bit obvious, really, isn't it?
Right.
But as society is, well, I remember thinking a long time ago, I don't know where I got this from, it's one of these kind of early intuitions you have, that at some time maybe society would kind of break down, and it's not happened. It never happens the way that you think, because you get an idea, and then when it happens, you think, oh, right, okay, so that you see, it's not like just suddenly, like Judge Dredd or Mad Max, you know, it goes down that road very, 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 very slowly, so that you don't notice that it's taken 20 or 30 years, but your neighborhood is now feels like kind of balkanized, and a bit like what's the name of that city? The one in the Future City in Back to the Future. You know, the one where it's been turned into a gambling den or something. And these things, they happen so slowly that you don't notice them. And
boiling frog.
Sorry, say again?
The boiling frog syndrome.
Absolutely. And so I think that the only recourse we have is to build our own community. I know this is just kind of simple and obvious, but it is the only recourse we have. Obviously, with the internet, community can be wider than, you know, just your local physical location.
Right.
But I think it's building communities who share the same values and wish to you know, maintain some kind of culture in the face of this. Now, I don't have any, excuse me, I don't have any kind of instant solutions for banksters and all this sort of stuff, because what I firmly believe is that we have to start what I call rebuilding reality from one pixel at a time, and you are the first pixel. And you create the morphic field of integrity and community, so that others can pick that up, because the bankster reality wouldn't have descended upon us in this slow tiptoe way that it has if we or our predecessors hadn't been sleeping. And one of the things that I mean, my mother has been such a good teacher for me, because I was always very kind of just kind of a bit very kind of naive, and I thought everything was wonderful, and she would say to me, dear, try and understand that not everybody is feels the same way as you do. And I know this is it's kind of against some kind of new age kind of things, but you have to be able to discern the wheat from the chaff. Because it is decisions that change the course of reality. If you don't make decisions, then reality carries on, because this is the basic rule of morphic fields, is that things remain the same if no direct, if nothing is, nothing acts upon it.
Right. Right.
So the decisions that we make as actors, agents in the world, in ourselves, we are creating the morphic field of integrity or community and respect and so forth that we're trying to build. And it's hard, but I think it's the only way. And through that, you then build connections and communities which strangely can make other connections. And then we're getting into the kind of, Hundredth Monkey, whatever, law of attraction or whatever, because you're creating something that then other things start coming into resonance with them, and you never know where that might take you. But you've got to put the energy in with decisions that make only perhaps micro changes of direction, but every micro change of direction you make is, navigating from one, quantum universe to one that could be slightly better or slightly worse, depending on the learning that you've, been able to apply.
Right. One thing that a lot of people who talk about and think about the 100th Monkey, and I'm just as guilty as everybody else with this, is that, when I first envisioned this, the whole idea about the collective consciousness and that 100th Monkey effect, I saw that instantaneous shift within humanity. And that would be, oh my God, that would be so wonderful to see and experience. But the reality of it is that you made such a great point, is that it is a very slow moving process. And 200 years down the future, when we look back at this time, that we're going through right now on the planet, we may go, wow, that was just a blink of the eye. That 20 years time frame that so many different things shifted and all of society finally got a clue about our connectiveness. It happened so fast. But while we're sitting here experiencing it, it is a slow process that's going through. I mean, so there's somewhere in the middle there that reality lies as far as the 100th Monkey effect is concerned. I think I do believe that there is the possibility of instantaneous change and instantaneous awareness, but I think that's down the road when we've got a much larger and much more powerful set of beings here on the planet that have really got it together and have the tools at their disposal to be able to affect the change in a grander way.
Yeah, I mean, my own take would be that I would see that as the final coalescing,
right,
of we're kind of building up, individual empowerment and agency, then communities, and then they build up more networks of value and so forth. And so, do you see what I'm going with this?
Right.
And so that as kind of the segments kind of reach towards each other and gradually fill in,
right.
Rather so that wherever this is going, probably won't be kind of apparent until retrospect,
right?
Where we've got a retrospective view on it.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you 100% there.
But I think that we might. I think there are a lot of kind of illusions about this, and I think that that there's a kind of expectation that this is going to be easy, and I think that it's that what we get out of it is going to be proportional to the amount of energy that we've put in to our own development.
Very, very key statement right there.
Yeah, if it was easy, everybody would do it.
So we're at the top of the hour, and where can people get a hold of you at, Claire? What websites would be best for the people to contact you on, and where can they pick up the book?
Righto. Well, the book is on lulu.com. If you put in Waking the Monkey or Claire Rae Randall at lulu.com, the book will come up in paper or ebook. It's also on Kindle off Amazon. And I have a blog. Well, I have several blogs, but the first one is the wakingthemonkey.blogspot.co.uk, in which I've put a few sample chapters from early drafts, and there's a number of blogs on there on reflections of different aspects of the book that I expand upon. One of which is my interest in the Grateful Dead, and how this was a background thread of the '95 event.
Yeah, I read that. That was a good one.
Oh, thank you very much. And there will be links to the Lulu site there. I've also got a couple of other blogs, one in which I analyse political correct newspeak of the Orwellian variety, called pcnewspeak.blogspot.co.uk, and there's a blog that's an old blog that I used with a public inquiry here in Leeds last year, and that was on cosmicclaire.blogspot.co.uk, and it's one of my how shall I say, pseudonyms, Cosmic Claire. And I've also got pages on Facebook. I'm Claire Rae Randall, and I also have my author page is Cosmic Claire, and Waking the Monkey is the book page as well. So you can find me there if you'd like to say hello. That's I think it.
Oh,
so thank you.
Well, we'll have links in the info tab on wherever you are listening to this at. So really easy access. Just scroll down and click on the link there, and it'll take you to the Waking the Monkey blog. And good stuff. All right, so we're going to take a short break, and we're going to come back in the member section. If you're out there listening on one of the other formats, the iTunes or the Vimos or the YouTubes or wherever this audio lands, I would urge you to go on over to www.the100thmonkeyradio.com, and for the price of an espresso once a month, you can have access to 6 years, almost coming up on 7 years now of audio archives there. So we will see you guys in hour 2, where we are going to talk to Claire about the actual experience that she had back there in '95 and some of the breakthroughs that she made personally. And I think that working on yourself first is a very important key in this whole thing. So we're going to delve into that a little bit, and we will see you on the other side. Condemnation without investigation is the height of ignorance.
Change the way you look at things, and the things you look at change.
Namaste, my friends.